Okay, so what's your position? Are you pro-amnesty for illegal immigration?
No, never have been. In fact, I'm strongly against amnesty for a number of different reasons. The most important thing we need to do is enforce our existing laws. We have existing. So I am not, and I will never support, never have and never will support any effort to grant blanket legalization amnesty to folks who have entered or stayed in this country illegally. First of all, earned path to citizenship is basically code for amnesty. It's what they call it. And the reality of it is this. This has to do with the bottom line that America cannot be the only country in the world that does not enforce its immigration laws. It is unfair to the people that have legally entered this country to create an alternative pathway for individuals who entered illegally and knowingly did so. If you do that, you will never have a legal immigration system that works. No one's going to follow the law. There's an easier way to do it.
I know.
You have American interests hiring them, absolutely. And in many cases, they're great workers. The biggest problem is that you have some great, wonderful people coming in from Mexico that are working the crops, they're working cutting lawns, they're doing a lot of jobs that I'm not sure that a lot of Americans are going to take those jobs. And that's the dichotomy. That's the big problem, because you have a lot of great people coming in doing a lot of work, and I'm not so sure that a lot of other people are going to be doing that work. So it is a very tough problem. But I do say this, you have a law, or at least you have to establish a law, and I guess we're sort of a country, and other people aren't supposed to be coming into our country illegally.
Yeah, we've got the quote, actually, from 2012, a Newsmax interview. The Democrats didn't have a policy for dealing with illegal immigrants. What they did have going for them is they weren't mean-spirited about it. Romney had a crazy policy of self-deportation, which was maniacal. It sounded as bad as it was.
We have a crisis in illegal immigration, and the unhappy truth is neither party is serious about solving the problem. In my view, we need to do three things. Number one, we need to do everything humanly possible to secure the border. The reason there are 11 million people here illegally is because the federal government has fallen down on its vital job of securing our borders. Number two, I am categorically opposed to amnesty. Amnesty is wrong, it's contrary to rule of law, and it's unfair to the millions of legal immigrants who waited in line and came here legally. And number three, we need to remain a nation that doesn't just welcome, that celebrates legal immigrants who follow the rules and come here seeking the American dream.
An inability to control the border with Mexico is a big issue for both the nation in general and Texas in specific. Do you favor a path to citizenship for illegal aliens already in the U.S., stricter border enforcement, and or the building of a border wall, or some other policy or combination of policies?
Well, there were a lot of questions in that piece. Let me lay out my position on immigration, because I can state it simply and in one sentence. I am strongly opposed to illegal immigration. I am categorically opposed to amnesty. And I strongly support legal immigrants who follow the rules and come here seeking to work towards the American dream. I support any and all possible efforts to secure the border. That includes fences, that includes walls, that includes technology, that includes helicopters, that includes drones, that includes manpower, that includes employment verification, that includes approaching it as a law enforcement priority. And right now, neither party is serious about doing that. With respect to a path to citizenship or amnesty, I categorically oppose it.
If we were to sum up this proposal, it would be to beef up border security, at the same time create a pathway to citizenship for illegal immigrants now in the country. Why would you support this, given the obvious political risk that this carries in your own party?
Well, three things. First of all, even if we didn't have a single person in this country in violation of immigration laws, we'd still have to do immigration reform. And what it does is it creates a way for us to address the millions of people that are here undocumented in a way that's compassionate, but also in a way that's responsible. It'll allow them to ultimately earn access to our legal immigration system.
As you well know, and the criticism is fast and furious from conservatives like Ted Cruz from Texas, your fellow senator, who says for those who are going through the legal process, they'll feel like chumps who are outside this country. His word, because those who are here illegally would get on this legal path to citizenship, even if they would pay a penalty, even if they would pay a fine and have to go through other checks. Why isn't it tantamount to amnesty, as your critics say?
Well, first of all, amnesty is the forgiveness of something.
Rubio is a huge player in this battle for immigration reform. He's kind of in a sticky situation right now, isn't he? Yeah, he is. He wants to be able to say he was one of the people who helped to pass immigration reform. At the same time, he doesn't want to look like he let something through that wasn't strong enough.
He's been lobbying behind the scenes. What does that even mean?
Well, he's been working with Republicans trying to get them on board.
Labor and big business agreeing, apparently, on a key part of the immigration reform bill. But final deal, it still faces some hurdles. And so is this guest worker program, in your mind, a good idea?
Well, the Republicans are just absolutely rushing to do whatever they can to get out of the box they're in. They're in somewhat of a box, or maybe they're not, but they think they are. And they're going to make it possible for 11 million or 12 million illegals to become citizens. You know, you have to look at it, and we want to do the right thing, and you have to do the right thing. But those 12 million votes are going to the Democrats no matter what they do, no matter how far out in front they are. It makes absolutely no difference.
At his New York penthouse office atop Trump Tower, he convened a meeting. Trump ushered in a pair of men. One to talk about the awards and a Democratic strategist who works with nonprofits. And 3 young Dreamer activists. The Dreamers were on a tour sharing their stories with those less likely to support them, like Tea Party supporters. You know, the truth is I have a lot of illegals working for me in Miami, he told them, using the term for undocumented immigrants those in the meeting found offensive. You know, in Miami, my golf course is tended by all these Hispanics. If it wasn't for them, my lawn wouldn't be the lawn it is. It's the best lawn, Pacheco recalled Trump saying. Then Trump addressed the issue dear to their hearts, amnesty for illegal aliens. You have convinced me, Trump said to the delight of the activists in the room.
This current bill is a mess. It is repeating the same failed pattern we saw in 1986. 1986, Congress came to the American people and said, we're going to grant amnesty to some 3 million people who are here illegally. And in exchange, we'll secure the borders. We'll fix the problem so illegal immigration will go away. What happened was the amnesty happened. 3 million people got amnesty, but the borders never got secured. And the problem got worse and worse. Today, instead of 3 million people, we're dealing with 11 million people who are here illegally. And what Congress is saying is the exact same deal, which is legalization first, and then they're promising maybe someday in the future the border will be secured. What an overwhelming majority of Americans want to see is the border secured first, fix the problem, stop illegal immigration, and then improve legal immigration to welcome legal immigrants.
I've been in Congress 20 years. This is the first time that I know 25, 30 Democrats, members of the Hispanic Congressional Caucus under the leadership of Rubén Hinojosa, have gone to the Speaker, a Speaker not of our party, and said, we want to engage you in a conversation because we're looking for a solution. What I would hope is that Speaker Boehner will embrace our coming to him and that we can work collectively. Because, look, this cannot be a partisan issue. Look, you can talk about Benghazi, and we can talk about Syria, we can talk about Obamacare and its implementation. Let's not let this issue, the one issue in which we have seen Republicans and Democrats come together, fall into the morass of the bickering and the fighting here in Washington, D.C. It's something we have to end. It's a tragedy what's happening to American immigrant families.
If this bill is not pulled to the right in the House, we saw what Steve King did with the DREAM Act. This is a major test of whether or not our political system can get real things done. And I do believe with the bipartisan support that we've seen in the Senate that there's a chance, if all of these poison pills are not placed in its path, that we could see a path to getting this done this year, immigration reform.
And Ted did go, made an effort and was effective in talking to House members, urging a no vote. It was very dicey over there. It was a near-run thing. People forget that.
And my point is very simple. What is the rush? Why are we proceeding gangbusters? And the only explanation that makes sense is there are many senators, it seems, in this body, perhaps on both sides of the aisle, that very much want a fig leaf. They want something that they can claim, we are supporting border security, when in fact this bill does not. I would suggest, Madam President, if you contrast this amendment to the amendment I introduced, you can see the difference between a bill that actually would protect border security versus something that is merely meant to tell gullible constituents that we've done something. The first and most important difference is this amendment provides legalization first and then border security maybe at some time in the future. And, Madam President, we have seen this before. In 1986, it was the same promise Congress made, and we got the legalization, we got the amnesty, and we never, ever, ever got border security. In contrast, the amendment I introduced reflects the will of the American people to have border security first, and only then the possibility of legalization. Secondly, this amendment does not require operational control of the border. Current law requires that. This amendment weakens current law on operational control. My amendment would require that the problem actually be solved. Thirdly, this amendment does not require a biometric entry-exit system. It weakens current law. Current law requires it. This amendment takes that out. Instead, it requires essentially a photo ID. Now, I would suggest, Madam President, for anyone who perhaps has known a teenager, you would know that the difficulty of securing a fake ID with a picture on it is not very high. Any flea market in the land will allow it. Fourth, this bill weakens the requirements of statutes on secure fencing. It weakens current law on border security. Fifth, this amendment is not offset. My amendment was offset, so it's brand new spending in this amendment with no offset. And sixth, this amendment has no real enforcement. The amendment I introduced said if the changes within it on border security were not implemented, within 3 years, 20% of the salary of political appointees at DHS would be reduced, 20% of the budget would be reduced, and it would be block granted to the state to fix the problem. Fundamentally, this is about political cover. It's not about solving the problem. That's not a solution the American people can be proud of, and I urge this body to reject the amendment, to vote against cloture, and to reject the underlying bill. I yield the floor.
Let's talk about immigration. You're Hispanic. You have a wonderful life story. You were part of that bipartisan group that put together an immigration reform bill. You voted for it, and then when you got a lot of heat from people in your own party, you walked away from it.
Well, that's not an accurate assessment. What I'm saying to people is we can't do it in a massive piece of legislation. And I know, because I tried. We understand that we have to deal with 12 million human beings that are in this country that have been here for longer than a decade. We know we have to deal with this. We are not prepared to deal with it until first you can prove to us this will never happen again.
Well, if you became president, would you sign the bill that you put together into law?
Well, that's a hypothetical that will never happen. What I would do if I was president, the first thing I would do is I would ask Congress to pass a very specific bill that puts in place E-Verify, an entry-exit tracking system to prevent visa overstays, and improve security on the border. Once we achieve that, step two would be we would modernize our legal immigration system, less family-based, more merit-based. And then the third step would be to pass a bill that goes to the 10 million people that are here, 12 million that are here illegally. If they've been here for longer than a decade, they have to pass a background check, they have to learn English, they have to pay taxes, they have to pay a fine, and they would get a work permit. And after a substantial period of time in that status, assuming they haven't violated any of the conditions of that status, they would be allowed to apply for legal residency, just like anybody else would, not a special process. And after you're a legal resident, after a number of years, by law, you're allowed to apply for citizenship. It's a long process, it's a reasonable process, it's a fair process, but it has to happen in that order, and it begins with serious enforcement measures.
Senator, you're the son of immigrants, of course, but would a President Rubio revoke deferred action and the executive action by President Barack Obama that would benefit more than 4 million people, undocumented immigrants in this country?
Well, we have two executive actions. The first was DACA, which applies to young people that arrived in this country very young age before they were adults. And I don't think we can immediately revoke that. I think it will have to end at some point. And I hope it'll end because of some reform to the immigration laws. It cannot be the permanent policy of the United States, but I'm not calling for it to be revoked tomorrow or this week or right away. There is a new executive action that applies to adults, to a broader population of people, and that, I believe, is a wrong approach. I would revoke it because it's hurting our efforts to reform our immigration laws. It is adding credibility to the argument that we cannot do immigration reform because the federal government is not serious about enforcing immigration laws and preventing a future illegal immigration crisis.
Bigger picture, beyond what's happening right now, the next 2 years of the Obama administration, what are we looking at in terms of immigration? Where do we go from here?
Well, I think it's very difficult to work with this administration on immigration because people have no trust that they'll ever enforce the law. But I do believe that we should pass a bill that puts in place the necessary measures to enforce our immigration laws.
One bill that you are very well known for is a bill that passed the Senate but did not become law because it didn't get through the House, and that was comprehensive immigration reform. I know you've said that you don't think it should be comprehensive in the future. It should be piecemeal. You need to convince voters.
I don't think it can pass as a comprehensive piece of legislation.
That's the issue?
Yeah, and I have evidence. We tried it.
Right.
We have to bring great people into this country, okay? And I love the idea of immigration, but it's got to be legal immigration. Now, a lot of these people are helping us, whether it's the grapes or whether it's jobs. And sometimes it's jobs, in all fairness, I love our country, but sometimes it's jobs that a citizen of the United States doesn't want to do. I mean, there are jobs that a lot of people don't want to do. I want to move them out, and we're going to move them back in and let them be legal. But they have to be in here legally.
Legally? Like
otherwise,
legal?
Excuse me, otherwise you don't have a country. You don't have a country. If people can just pour into the country illegally, you don't have a country. But I would expedite the system.
When you say legal, do you mean legal status, or can they be eligible for citizenship?
Legal status.
No citizenship.
No citizenship. I mean, we'll see later down the line. Who knows what's going to happen?
So you're open
but legal
to it.
status.
So you're open to ultimately?
It's something I would think about, but I would say right now, no, I'm not open to it. I would say legal status.
What about the dream?
Now, the 15 million illegal aliens already in the United States. What do you do with them?
I think right now you're going to have to do something, and, you know, it's hard to generalize, but you're going to have to look at the individual people, see how they've done, see how productive they've been, see what their references are, and then make a decision.
All right. On a case by case, it's going to take a long time and a lot of people.
But, you know, you have some great productive people that came
No doubt.
in. And then you have some total disasters that probably should be in prison.
Okay.
So I think a lot of Americans support you as far as the border, making the border tough.
And other
but what
things,
do you do
Joe.
about the
other
well,
things?
of course, the tougher question is, what do we do with the 11 million undocumented workers that are already here? We're not going to send them back to Mexico. That's not possible. Do we legalize them and say, we know you're here, but we're not going to give you a pathway to citizenship because you got here illegally, but we'll legalize you and let you work here for a couple of years? How do we handle the 11 million already here?
So, Joe, it's the big question. And the really a bigger question is, I don't think the 11 million, which is a number you've been hearing for many, many years. I've been hearing that number for 5 years. I don't think that's an accurate number anymore, because I'm now hearing it's 30 million. It could even be 34 million.
So what do we do? What do we do with all of them? Whether it's 11 or 30 million, do we give them legalized status so they're not living in the shadows? Let them work, but if they break the law, send them back. What do we do?
Well, the first thing we do is take the bad ones, of which there are, unfortunately, quite a few. We take the bad ones and get them the hell out. We have to get the bad ones out. Then the other ones, and I'm a very big believer in merit system, I have to tell you, because some of these people have been here, they've done a good job. You know, in some cases, sadly, they've been living under the shadows, et cetera, et cetera. We have to do something. So whether it's merit or whether it's whatever, but, you know, I'm a believer in the merit system. If somebody's been outstanding, we try and work something out.
Do you think, can you guarantee that you don't have illegal or undocumented workers working for you in hotel projects or various projects?
I can't guarantee it.
You know, I have to say, I suspect an awful lot of Republicans were having the same reaction I was as we were listening to the debate, which is that we saw one Republican after another giving an ode to amnesty, one after the other saying how we needed to be compassionate and we needed to just forgive the 12 million who came here legally and presumably put them all on a path to citizenship. And I got to say, my reaction as I was listening to that, I was just getting angrier and angrier. Look, there is nothing compassionate about a bunch of politicians saying, I'm so compassionate, I'm going to give away your job. Because that's what they're saying. None of them are losing their job, but they're happy to tell working men and women across this country that your job can be taken away by people coming here illegally.
Senator, Yep. So let's say we do secure the border. Then they have the question of those people that broke our laws, didn't respect our sovereignty. What do we do?
Well, look, I think we need to solve this problem one step at a time. You don't have to solve everything at once. That's the fallacy of comprehensive reform. We need to start with actually securing the borders. And one of the nice things is, actually, existing federal law is quite robust. If you look at federal law, it is federal law today that there should be 700 miles of double-layered fencing built along our southern border.
Where is it?
The Obama administration, we have about 30 miles built. If I'm elected president, we will build all 700 miles. What's missing is the presidential will to get it done.
Senator, I agree, but isn't it bold? Listen, you have been probably the most bold and outspoken against Republicans that have been weak and timid and surrendered, and especially on Obamacare, especially on executive amnesty. And my question to you is, this now seems to be a battle, but that the lines are drawn on the more conservative wing of the Republican Party, where you stand as an insurgent that is even hated by establishment types.
Now, I want to go back to the discussion we had a minute ago, because, you know, what was said was right. The Democrats are laughing. Because if Republicans join Democrats as the party of amnesty, we will lose. And, you know, I understand that when the mainstream media covers immigration, it doesn't often see it as an economic issue. But I can tell you, for millions of Americans at home watching this, it is a very personal economic issue. And I will say the politics of it would be very, very different if a bunch of lawyers or bankers were crossing the Rio Grande. Or if a bunch of people with journalism degrees were coming over and driving down the wages in the press. See. Then we would see stories about the economic calamity that is befalling our nation. And I will say, for those of us who believe people ought to come to this country legally and we should enforce the law, we're tired of being told it's anti-immigrant. It's offensive. I am the son of an immigrant who came legally from Cuba to seek the American dream. And we can embrace legal immigrations while believing in the rule of law. And I would note, try going illegally to another country. Try going to China or Japan. Try going to Mexico. See what they do. Every sovereign nation secures its borders, and it is not compassionate to say we're not going to enforce the laws and we're going to drive down the wages for millions of hardworking men and women. That is abandoning the working man. Thank you.